Miss Mattie Merrywinkle, Chapter 16. My Beautiful Boy. During the last week of August, Mattie and Winnie finally managed to book a slot in Pat's pantry for one of their eat out to help out half-price meals. Winnie was delighted at the prospect. After all, we've really got something to celebrate now, haven't we? You found your long-lost daughter after 40-odd years. That's huge compared to coming out of 14 days in reasonably comfortable isolation. Mattie had to agree, and as they sat at their pavement table in the sunshine and tucked into their gammon, egg and chips, she brought her friend up to date with how things had gone when Marigold visited the flat. I needn't have worried about what she might think. She didn't seem to notice the cider drinkers or the litter rammed into the hedge or the peeling paint on the window frames. She just accepted it all as if she'd been coming there for years. And Gerald loved her. As you know, he doesn't bestow his affections readily, so that was a bonus. She'd never have got the photo she wanted if he'd chosen not to cooperate. So, tell me again, what are these photos for exactly? By the way, have you got room for a pudding? That lemon meringue pie looks delicious. No, I'll be full after this, but you carry on. Like I told you before, she makes a living by doing illustrations for other people's books, mainly books for children. And the one she's working on at the moment is called The Cat's Whiskers. It's about a cat who thinks and behaves as if he's very special, but who in fact is nothing special at all, except to the little girl who owns him, of course. Sounds like your Gerald to a T, or maybe I should say to a G. I know. So she took photos of him eating and sleeping and all that kind of thing, and then she'll use those to do her paintings for the book. And were you in the photos? Are you going to be famous too? No, I kept well out of the way and I don't think anyone is going to be famous. But I can't wait to see the book when it's finished. She emailed a photograph of the first illustration she'd done. It's an amazing likeness. Well, let me know when it comes out and I'll buy a copy for the grandchildren. I bet a lot of people around here would do the same. Your Gerald's quite well known in the neighbourhood. He is. But for all the wrong reasons. I'm not sure people will want to be reminded of the horrible ginger monster that takes great delight in terrifying the living daylights out of anything that crosses his path. I still think it's exciting. Has she said any more about you going down to stay in Kent? She mentioned it briefly while we were having lunch in the hotel. But once she'd been to the flat, I think she understood that I couldn't leave Gerald for any length of time. Martha next door will pop in and feed him if it was just for a day or two. Oh, but he's a beggar for refusing to use his litter tray if he thinks I've deserted him. If Marigold is happy to come up here from time to time, that will be enough, really, for the time being, anyway. Actually, I might just be able to squeeze in a bit of pudding. Shall we share one? I'll only have a small bite. On the bus going home, Winnie asked Mattie if she'd seen anything more of Charlie recently. So Mattie told her about the time she'd bumped into him when he'd been litter picking in the park, and how he'd opened up to her about the circumstances of his marriage. So I was right, was I? And I don't think he's ever been really happy since the day they tied the knot. Such a waste. Well, maybe, but he seems to think the world of his kids, and he's very proud of the fact that his sons followed him into the family business. So it's not all bad news. No, but you know what I mean. You and him. Well, it's funny you should say that because I've been thinking about it a lot over the past couple of months, especially since our conversation in the park, and I think things are fine the way they are. I mean, he's a lovely man and all that, but I'm not sure if I want any man in my life full time. I think it would drive me nuts, to be honest. It's nice to indulge in a bit of friendly flirtation from time to time, but I'm also more than happy to let Shirley Scrimshy wash his socks and pick his underpants off the bedroom floor and put up with his snoring because, unless he's some kind of god, she'll be doing all those things. Oh, I think you're very wise, love. Having been married myself, I know firsthand that everything comes at a price. Hey up, here's our stop. Mattie closed her front door and hung up her yellow anorak on the peg in the hall. It was just after 4 o'clock, so she was surprised that Gerald wasn't waiting for her return with a disapproving scowl on his face. Yoo-hoo, Gerald! I'm home! Dinner time, love! Still no skittering of paws across the lino. No answering meow. He must be sleeping somewhere. He did more of that recently. He was probably curled up in the airing cupboard again. Where's me handsome lad, then? The kitchen was deserted, so Mattie made her way to the living room. Then she checked the airing cupboard and finally the bedroom. That's where she found him, curled up in a ball in the middle of her dressing gown, on top of the counterpane. He looked so peaceful lying there, it seemed a shame to wake him. So Mattie decided she'd go and make a nice cup of tea first. She reached out to give his ear an affectionate stroke before heading downstairs, and that's when she realised that the body on the bed was stone cold and completely lifeless. No, not my boy! You can't take my beautiful boy, my handsome lad! But he had been taken, and reluctantly acknowledging that, Mattie curled herself into a tight ball, lay down on the counterpane beside him, and sobbed. The room slowly darkened, and Mattie continued to lie there. She woke at some point when it was pitch black outside and went to get Gerald's favourite blanket, which she lovingly wrapped around him before lying down again and drifting back into fitful sleep. How was she going to get by without her beautiful boy?